Hello and welcome to Seen and Heard, a podcast about abuse on Heart Over Ego Radio. This is an exploration of domestic violence through raw, unfiltered, and important conversations about the realities of domestic abuse, the effects, the survival tactics, the work being done all over the world to end abuse and more. Myself, Mandee Elam, Vanessa Hill, and Lexi Duquette are all childhood friends from Vermont. Life has led us all on very different journeys. However, each of us have experienced some form of abuse. We chose to come together to host a discussion around healing it. Welcome, ladies. Vanessa, how are you today?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Lex?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Today we're recording. It's actually election day, the day that we're recording this episode. So there's lots of different energies going on around, and I can certainly feel, tension, and, you can see trauma come up in different ways from different people. And I'm just sending all kinds of love and peace out there. Even if you're listening, I will most likely be listening to this at a later date, but just know that we're holding the space for everybody.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those days. I'm going to turn CNN on after we're done recording.
I feel like paired with that full moon we just came out of, it's been pretty intense energy. So
yeah, and there's probably going to be a lot of violence regardless of who wins in the next couple of weeks. So I'm a little on edge today.
I am too about that.
Absolutely. That's why I brought it up, because so many people are, and our whole podcast is about abuse, and a big part of that is fear and worry about what could happen because of things that have happened in the past. And we have seen so far this year, a lot of, whether it was, planned or certain groups or whatever, we've seen violence, and it's not okay. And I live in Atlantic City, and they're boarding up I was driving down the road 2 days ago right in the city, and they were already boarding up all of the stores because they're afraid of them getting looted.
That's
wild. In itself, I'm like, it feels like a hurricane's coming, but it's not a hurricane. It's a hurricane of fucking people.
That's wild that they're doing that. I mean, wow, holy shit.
It's just insane. I can't even believe it.
It's intimidating. It's like, it gave me a weird feeling in my stomach. Like, this is a little weird and uneasy and spooky and intimidating.
Yeah.
Spooky. Yeah, I guess we'll know by 3 a.m.
We'll see. I feel like last time we knew by midnight though.
No, last election I was pregnant with my daughter, and I couldn't sleep. I was such a I just couldn't stand Trump, and I was so sure he wasn't going to win. And I stayed up all night, and I remember it was literally 3 a.m. and I woke my boyfriend up, and I was like, holy shit, Trump is the president. A reality TV star is the president of the most powerful country in the world. This is bananas.
Oh man, it was so interesting. I went to bed. For me, I was on the Bernie train, and I got heartbroken when he lost the nominee. But then it's I had all these, with the field of work I'm in, I had some visions, and I just kind of had this feeling and knowing that Trump was going to win. So I wasn't surprised when it happened, but it's kind of funny because a little later in the show today, we might talk about a little bit of emotional abuse. But growing up, something I always did to myself I would talk shit to myself and tell myself I could never be president every time I fucked up. So every time I made a mistake or did something wrong, I'd be like, well, I can't be president now. Can't be president now. Then all of a sudden, 4 years ago, Trump became president, and it gave me this inner freedom of oh my God, if he can be president, I can be fucking president now. This is awesome. And it helped me to actually step into my power quite a bit and do all the work that I'm doing now. Cause I'm fuck it. We can do whatever we want now. Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, truly anyone can be president. We know now. There's not really a high bar.
We know now. So anyway, we're sending all the love. And if you're listening to this post-election, we're still sending all the love. And there's lots of resources here on Heart Over Ego Radio. If you need some help with anything, Please like us, follow us, subscribe to us. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, all major podcast apps under Heart Over Ego Radio. We have lots of free resources, wonderful healers, and people you can connect with to give you some support while all of these uneasy feelings and times are taking place right now. But Vanessa, you had a topic for us, and I'm kind of like a Martian, so I'm actually pretty foreign to this case, and I'm excited to learn more about it.
Yeah, so the Johnny Depp Amber Heard saga that has been going on now for like 4 years. I've been following it this whole time. And it is, your kind of garden variety abuse situation where, the wife alleges that there's abuse and that's the reason for the divorce. And then the abuser claims that in fact never happened. Like all abusers never fucking own their shit. But I just kind of wanted to take you guys through a little timeline and we can talk about it because there are several things about this that have made me so angry over the past couple of years. And it really is, they're celebrities and they don't have necessarily like normal problems. And we put celebrities on a pedestal, but this whole case, I think really, it's such a great example of what happens to domestic abuse victims when they do come out and when they do like own their truth and say, no, this happened to me. And yeah, let's get into it.
Let's do it. Lexi, you're familiar with this, right?
A little. Yeah, I have been following it too here and there. And it's one of those things where I was like, I'm so glad I'm not a celebrity. And it's cringeworthy. It's definitely cringeworthy. And I want to hear this timeline over again because I feel like I've got it in bits and pieces. So it'd be nice to hear this, rehear it because afterwards, what's going on now with it, it's astounding. Like it's just
yeah. And the timeliness of it. And that's why we're talking about it today because we'll get into it. But Johnny Depp, he just lost this big libel suit against a newspaper in the UK for really just like saying what, Amber Heard claimed, just like printing it. So we'll circle back to that. But
the mic is yours, V. Lay it all down. Let us know. Fill us in.
Okay, so I got this information from several different websites. A lot is from the insider.com. I just want to give them credit because that's what you do.
Insider.
So we all know Johnny Depp. We probably all loved him at a certain point in our lives. I was always a big fan of his.
Not my type.
When I found out he had a place in Vermont, I thought that was so cool. And my whole family, all my aunts would go to Rutland because they wanted to run into him.
Okay, so wait, what?
I didn't know that.
Place in Rutland?
Yeah. So at one point during this divorce, he bought, or was it during or before, he bought a place up in Vermont. And I think it was either Killington area.
Yeah. It must have been Killington.
I think so. I don't know exact location, but there was like a sighting of him in Rutland, and it was like in the Rutland Herald and everything. And there was an article about him, moving and liking the area and him quoting this like about Rutland. And so Rutland, of course, made a big deal about it.
Rutland is like one of the worst. No offense to anyone who lives in Rutland.
I know. That's why it was so funny because it's like,
I can't.
Yeah.
I never go to Rutland maybe like twice a year to get my snow tires on. The dark energy just like seething from every like square foot of pavement in that city. There's something,
and it's gotten worse.
Yeah, Mandee, you probably haven't been there in years.
Well, actually, I've been there a few years ago, but I have a couple of friends from college who have bought houses there and have been like doing things within the community to try to help to start to change it over. But I have heard over and over that it is a dark energy. I've felt it. I lived there. For those of you who are not familiar with Vermont, it is a small state, and Rutland's like the second biggest city in it, or third biggest, I think second. Either way, and it did have kind of a rough energy for quite a while there, and probably still does in certain places. But I know that there's also a lot of healers and different cool people kicking around that area now too. So
well, they need it. They
do. And it's interesting because you wouldn't think that Johnny Depp would go to the Rutland area, but maybe he was up in like Mendon or Pico or some cute little area.
He needed some kind of like corporate chain service. Like he probably needed like to like upgrade his phone. Like why would he be in Rutland?
Exactly. Well, anyway, Vermont nestles and has second homes to many, many celebrities. So this is a common talk amongst the locals because there's always different celebrity sightings, but I had not heard of Johnny Depp being up in Rutland, and I don't even know about all this other stuff. So walk us through it, V.
Okay. So, okay. Now there was a movie. It was released in 2009 called The Rum Diary. Now, this is a Hunter S. Thompson book. It's my favorite book of all time. I've read it 50 times.
Really?
Yes. Oh. And Hunter S. Thompson is one of my favorite authors. So this is where Depp and Amber Heard meet. She plays like the female lead. So this is back in 2009. 2012, they're dating, the two of them. Like 2011, start of 2012. And now he had been in the news for like some violence with Kate Moss. I remember back in the 90s, like he had like trashed a hotel room and kind of like threatened her a little bit.
Okay.
But he was mostly keeping his nose clean. Like he was mostly in really good standing publicly. You know, he was kind of known for being a little kooky. But okay, so he's dating Amber Heard. Now, around 2009, like the year of the movie, Heard actually was arrested for physically assaulting her girlfriend at the time. So she also has a history of abuse, but the details of that, I mean, we know that they got into a disagreement. She allegedly grabbed her girlfriend's arm and like hit her arm or something like that. But the charges were dropped. And the girlfriend of Heard said, you know, she was wrongfully accused by cops. They like misinterpreted and over sensationalized the issue, the incident rather. But that later gets dredged up. So just that's an important part of this whole story.
Okay, we'll keep that in the bank.
Yeah. Okay, so then 2014, Amber and Johnny get engaged. And they marry in 2015. Do you guys remember that big thing where in 2015 they flew privately to Australia? And Australia has really strict biosecurity laws, and they didn't declare their Yorkshire Terriers. And they just like showed up with them, and it was like this huge thing, and they were gonna like take the dogs from them.
Oh, God. What? I don't remember that, but I lived in Australia as a little kid for a year.
I was 9. Yeah.
And we couldn't bring my dog because he would have had to live in quarantine for like over 6 months, and he was like 9, and it was too old to do that to him. I remember coming home, and it was just the best thing ever when I got to reunite my dog Duke. That was my first word in everything. Aww. Oversharing, sorry, but yes,
no, but that's so
I can vouch that it's a big fucking deal there.
Yes. And I remember there was this press conference with like the Australian Prime Minister or something, and he was such a weirdo, and he was saying all this weird shit about Johnny Depp. Okay, so there was a lot of turmoil in their relationship, and by 2016, Amber files for divorce. And the reason for filing for divorce is that she has been, you know, she alleges that she's been physically abused by him. So she gets a temporary restraining order, which that's usually pretty common. And she also alleges that, the abuse really takes place when Johnny is under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Now, I had read somewhere that he spends $250,000 a month on wine, like rare, expensive bottles of wine.
Damn. I know, I've done a lot of fine dining in my day, and I know a lot of men in particular who live on really nice red wine and like a piece of meat every day. And like, they're all about that really nice red wine. So I could see it happening.
Well, so she, at some point, she had filmed him, like one of his like drunken, abusive temper tantrums, basically. And I remember watching this when it was leaked. It looks like she like leaned her cell phone against something on like their dining room table. And it's the morning, I think. And he is pouring himself like a massive glass of red wine, which made me kind of puke. And he's like being very like verbally abusive, emotionally abusive. And I think he figures out she's filming him, and he kind of like physically comes at her or like knocks the phone or something. So she did have some evidence on like recorded. So like one of the incidents that gets brought up a lot is that he threw his phone at her face. And there were pictures of like her bruised cheekbone. So I don't know if you guys have ever had a phone thrown at you, but I have, and it hurts. And it's really like, phones are fucking heavy.
They're fucking heavy. And if I'm laying in bed and looking at my phone and holding it 6 inches above my face and I fall asleep or I drop it on my face, it fucking hurts. So I'm sure it being thrown at you would be rough.
I do that like nightly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Like, I experience that on my cheekbones.
The night before I had my daughter, my ex threw my iPhone at my stomach.
Oh my
really God. Hard. And it hurt so bad, and it scared me so bad. And then I went into labor like 4 hours later. Yeah.
I mean, sorry, B.
It's okay. It's just, it's a big fucking deal to throw a heavy ass phone at someone, especially hitting them in the face. So of course Depp denies all of these accusations. And he, through his reps, says that Amber is attempting to secure a premature financial resolution by alleging abuse. Of course, because why? Because he's a multimillionaire, and why else would she claim that she was abused?
Why
else? It must be for financial reasons. Like, okay. Another thing too that I learned in my situation, and I've actually heard this from other sources, is that testimony is evidence in a trial, in a case. So like an abuse victim speaking about what happened to them, it's not just like a he said, she said type of thing where you can just like be like, oh well, it really is admissible as evidence in a trial.
That's good.
Yeah, which
sorry. I was going to say a lot of places don't even allow like video and stuff. I have a client right now who lives up in Washington State and is having a hard time with an ex in custody and, not adhering to the agreement or showing up at times when they're not supposed to. And then like pounding on the door and being verbally harassive and threatening. And like, she'll take videos and she has it, but her lawyer and people keep telling her like, they can't use that. And I'm like, I just don't understand that. Like, it's fucking fact. It's video.
I know.
But hopefully we're going to change that. And kids aren't allowed to have a voice. And I have 2 clients right now, one in like Maine, 3, I think, one in Maine, 2 in Maine, and 1, out in Washington and somewhere else that I'm not thinking of right now, where same thing, their kids don't have a voice. They're not allowed to, Vermont, like they're not allowed to talk about what's going on in their household or what they're experiencing and have it be held up in court or taken into consideration or whatever legal term you use for that.
So probably the theory is that kids are really impressionable and could be coached if they're under a certain age. Do you think that's why kids can't, their testimony doesn't?
That would be my original thought, but I think we've advanced enough, and that's something we need to correct in our system if that's the case, because kids, especially if maybe they're over age 10 or something, should have a say in what's going on.
Yeah, I would think it.
And maybe they'll be scared because they have an abusive parent. Maybe they will lie. Maybe they won't be able to tell the truth or whatever, but they should at least have a chance.
I just watched that video of that little boy who testified against his mom. He was little. He saw his mom kill his sister, and she tried to make it out like a drowning. And it was him. He went to the grandfather and told the grandfather, and the grandfather brought him to the police. And I didn't get to finish watching it because I was really curious to see if they were able to use it or not. Because I'm curious about that too. Like, I feel like children, their voices should be heard. And I know there's a thing in Vermont where you can be, I want to look into it, a child's support in the courtroom, their voice somehow. But I want to see, like, how do you go, like, I got to look into that a little more.
Well, we're going to put those in the bank too and keep working on that as Seen and Heard progresses. But wow, we're not even partially through the timeline and we've got all kinds of things coming up. So nice topic today, V. Will you keep leading us further?
I know. I mean, because like I said in the beginning of the podcast, this whole case really brings up a lot of different issues. Like there's so much here and it's all playing out in public. So it's, you know, it's just interesting the way that people are responding. Okay, so they reach a $7 million divorce settlement, you know, for Amber, on August 16th, 2016. Amber testifies under oath at a deposition, and the settlement is reached, but she also withdraws her request for a domestic violence restraining order after the settlement is reached. She also rescinds her spousal support request of $50,000 a month. So I'm assuming because the settlement is reached, she's probably thinking like, you know, now I can move on with my life. I don't need to keep like going through all of this legal bullshit.
It sounds like she just wants to like cut all the cords and ties and like, I don't need the extra 50 G's a month. Like I'm good.
Exactly. Like, and like, thank God they didn't have children together. You can never get rid of your abuser if you have children with them.
You're experiencing that.
I know. Yeah. Sorry. I know I laugh about it because I have to find the humor in it. And I don't mean to offend anyone who's going through it, but it's just.
Well, that's part of your process and you're allowed to be your authentic self. And
I know.
That's part of how you've healed. And, you know, and this world is a funny place. And after we do kind of heal some of the wounds, we can find humor and love and light in the darkest of the shadows. So you just do you, V, and it's all good.
And V, Vanessa, I really think you saying that too and sharing your experience, hopefully, that you will be able to be that voice and that support for one woman out there that's like questioning whether a child is going to change it or not. Because I feel like so many women out there think a child will change it and it just gets worse.
Yeah.
And they should have ran first instead of, you know. So I think you're going to heal and help others sharing your story.
Thanks.
And that.
That's so nice. Yeah. I never want to discourage anyone from having a child. And, you know, Mandee's really like helped me work through, you know, everything that happened to me. And there's a reason that Lola, my daughter, is my daughter and that she was born. Like there was a reason that, you know, we were like meant to be mother and daughter.
Oh yeah.
Mandee is so good at that.
Turning it into, you know, thinking positively about it. And of course I don't regret any of it, but my advice is if you're in an abusive relationship, don't get pregnant, because it really just complicates everything and it makes everything really difficult.
If you have a choice, that's a nice choice to take. But then, at the same time, you know, I've pissed a lot of women off for saying this, especially, you know, my Anyway, I piss a lot of women off for saying it, but I do believe that all babies are divine and that every single soul that made its way here was divine. And it doesn't matter if you were a product of rape or love or an accident or a teen or whatever. There's a reason, and you as a soul, because I believe very much that souls line up in the non-physical to take a shot at Earth School and learn things, because it expands our soul growth so much by coming down into this dimension, in this arena. And so some of them will sign up and say, I'll come in, even if it's through that circumstance or this pain, or like I said, the worst one, a product of rape. Like some souls are like, I got this, no problem. And I come. So I very much honor each and every soul that chooses to come here, no matter how they came to get here. But if you have an option to control, this is where, free will really comes in to control maybe not having a child, because a lot of people think that having a child with someone or an abuser will make it better. It never makes it better. So I think that I fully support you in that statement, Vanessa. And I encourage women, if they have a choice, to choose to maybe not do that. But that's up to you and your higher self, and it's all going to play out.
And also, like, just to clarify, if you are in an abusive relationship, you probably are being pressured to have sex, and it might be out of your control to get pregnant or not get pregnant. And like you said, if it's a situation where you can be in some sort of control of whether you have a child, I would recommend not. But I didn't mean to negate, the fact that a lot of women have to deal with their abuser and have sex with their abuser.
Yeah.
And pregnancies happen, and they're not always our choice. So.
And that's like part of that. If it's not your choice and it's for the highest good and divine timing, then we go from there, but if you do have an opportunity to act in your free will and prevent that from happening with an abuser, then it could be helping you on your life path. But if you do get pregnant and it happens, then that soul chose to be here, and it is divine, is how I feel about
it. If you want to have the baby also, because this is also not a pro-life podcast.
True. Like, I don't know. For me, I feel it's interesting because I haven't really seen a lot of birth yet. I've been near babies after they're born, but I've actually witnessed quite a bit of death. And like, I feel very much it's like a vessel. And what, for me, my angels and higher self and team have showed me, and what I've learned is that souls kind of dip in and out, and they're like, oh, I have an option of these parents. I'm going to maybe do these ones. I'm not sure which ones I'm going to pick yet. As a mom gets pregnant and she's growing this vessel, this body, the soul can kind of dip in and out and connect. And I have not been pregnant yet in this lifetime, but I've had friends tell me like, oh my gosh, there's just these moments, you're connecting with this soul or this baby. And then there's other times it's just kind of there. And then fully upon birth is like when the soul truly integrates. And then I believe we get held very much by our angels and our spirit guides, and babies can see all kinds of other things that we really can't. And as we tend to grow and get caught up into this society and this world, then we lose our connection with spirit a little bit, and then our first memories start to come in. So that's kind of my theory on the whole thing. But I believe very much that the soul does get to choose, and if you choose to have an abortion, that it's not causing harm or evil or anything like that. I believe evil is an absence of love, and often those choices are an act of love. And so yeah, that's my little spiel on it. And I honor anything anybody ever chooses, because I trust it's for their highest good.
Yeah. And I mean, you told me, you put it into word, like a type of wording that it was more digestible to me, that like Lola chose you to be her mom. And that made me feel like, because I did feel a connection, when I got pregnant, I was being abused, and I just never really considered having an abortion, because for some reason I just felt like a connection with the life inside me, but that is not always the case. And it's okay if that's not the case. And if you do, we've really gone off on a tangent, but I think it's okay.
Well, absolutely. And like all of these topics are in, we're taking off the Band-Aids to all the guilt and shame right now. Like we're talking about abortion, we're talking about all kinds of stuff right now. So I think it's okay. And this is how we start to heal ourselves, and having these hard, weird conversations and letting maybe letting there be peace and honoring whatever anybody chooses is for their own soul's highest good. And I do very much believe Lola chose you to be her mama, and you guys had things to do. And, sometimes that's the case. Like, my dad is not a big part in my lifetime, this life. And that's happened for a reason. And now that I've forgiven all the situations that have gone down, I realize why the space had to happen and why the impacts that were made on me had to happen. And I look at it in such a different lens. When I was younger, I hated him and I felt neglected and all these things. But once I healed and shifted, I realized my own soul path and why I chose to not spend a lot of time with him in this lifetime. So there's always a bigger, if you hold space for maybe there's more or there's something bigger, and you just trust what your intuition says, like you said, you felt a connection with her, then that's all you need to worry about is what feels good and in alignment and like love.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, we should probably get back to our Johnny Depp case, but yes, all the things.
Okay, so we talked about the $7 million settlement. Okay, so at this point, and this is 2016, Depp and Heard, they released a joint statement saying, quote, "Our relationship was intensely passionate and at times volatile, but always bound by love. Neither party has made false accusations for financial gain." So Johnny, this statement is approved by him, is approved by his reps. He says she didn't lie. There's no, for financial gain, like it's all good. And the statement continued, "There was never any intent of physical or emotional harm," which I don't really understand. It's like you threw a phone at her face. Were you intending for it to not hurt her? Like, I'm unclear. But, those like vague statements that people put out, they never make sense. They're never honest. They're never authentic. They're always stupid.
I feel like it's always them trying to make themselves feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those statements.
Right. Or hide behind like, oh, I was in a rage. I didn't know what I was doing.
Exactly.
Which can happen for sure, but it's definitely also an excuse.
Yeah, but it's like you also have a brain, and that if you throw a phone at someone, it's going to cause physical damage, and your intention at that time is to hurt that person.
Exactly.
So, okay, so Amber takes that $7 million settlement and she donates all of it to charity. Okay. That's important.
Don't move.
Yeah. And I mean, she had a career, and when you're at that level of celebrity, you're making tons of money. I mean, I'm sure she's
all right.
Was fine financially. Yep. So 2017, the divorce is finalized, which was like a full year since she had filed. She keeps their dogs, the ones that were involved in the scandal in Australia. And Depp retains sole possession of all of the properties that they lived in, including his private island in the Bahamas. It's also reported that there's a non-disparagement clause in the divorce. So both of them basically are not allowed to speak negatively about the relationship or the breakup.
Okay.
Okay. In December 2018, Amber writes an op-ed for the Washington Post, and she doesn't specifically name Johnny Depp, but she basically is like, I was abused, and like what this culture put me through because I spoke out against, a popular, beloved figure, let alone just like being a man. But like speaking out against a high profile person, it really, I felt like the wrath is basically what she says. I paraphrased that, but, I remembered reading, I feel like it was Vanity fair. She was interviewed about it, and I remember I loved the whoever wrote it. I should have looked it up before we recorded, but the person that wrote it was like, you know, quoting her in the article, and she's like, yeah, like I was abused. And the author was like, so what she's saying is she was beaten. Like, that's what women mean when they say they were abused. Like, she was beaten. And I just liked how the author really just like put it out there and was very clear, like what physical abuse really is. You know, like you are beaten up, like you get the shit beaten out of you. It's fucking horrible. Because it just seems like there's always this like kind of need or push to like wrap it up into like a pretty, like I was abused kind of like way of phrasing it. You know, like instead of being like, no, like I was like really injured and hurt.
Well, yeah, because we had to keep it all a secret.
I know. And you have to be like, oh, like even the term domestic abuse, domestic violence, for me, it leaves me a little unsatisfied.
Yeah, because, well, you know, back in the day, I know my grandparents' house and whatnot, it would be like my grandfather would get really drunk and he was a veteran and always at the VFW and this and that. And if things were getting rough at the house or he was beating people up or whatever, they would just come over and be like, calm down, Nikki, go to bed, you know? And then that was it. Or like drop them off. Like there was no drinking and driving back then. Like, but it was also very shameful and you kept it a secret and like you didn't talk about it. And so, you know, and everybody has those stories, especially the generations that came before us. And so, you know, it's all very interesting to me. But yeah, it's about the stigma around it, and we need to start talking about what it actually means because it's kept secret and we keep it common. Like I just think of like all these video games and shit where you can like, you know, abuse people in it all the time, and it's becoming so common for people that they desensitize to it. So it's nice to hear that they were more detailed about what that actually meant.
Yeah. And, you know, those are kind of umbrella terms. So abuse can be, everyone I think has their own idea of like, you know, their own little rating system in their head of, you know, how bad, you know, okay, like maybe verbal abuse, like doesn't mean as much to me as physical abuse, or, you know, I just feel like everyone makes their own judgments about different levels of abuse. So when you're a woman and you come out and you say like, I was abused, you automatically are kind of at the judgment of what others think that could mean or means. And maybe like what their bar is for the severity of the abuse that like they assume you've been through. Like maybe that bar isn't high enough to really like give a shit about, you know. So I don't know if I was articulate enough in explaining that, but
well, it's all good. Picking up what you're putting down. Let's hop back on the timeline.
Okay. So Amber writes the op-ed in 2018, December of 2018, 2019, Depp sues her for $50 million for defamation over the article. The suit claims that Heard, quote, is not a victim of domestic abuse. She's a perpetrator, and denies that Depp ever abused her. So his statement when the divorce had wrapped up was that, you know, she hadn't lied about anything for financial gain. And, you know, it was all good. But now he's kind of backtracking and saying that she, in fact, was the abuser. And that her allegations, the suit also alleged that her allegations were part of an elaborate hoax to generate positive publicity for the actress, which I think is super ridiculous and lame.
Especially when she donated her settlement to charity.
Yeah. And so, well, the judge in the libel case that was just, that he just lost, made a statement that, you know, his defense, Depp's defense, is claiming that she was like this big gold digger. And the judge was like, really? Because donating $7 million to charity, like your entire divorce settlement, an enormous sum of money, I don't think that that's what a gold digger would do. So like, you're full of shit, basically. So
thank God for that guy, because sometimes I feel like women get put in these positions where they've gone through hell, and because of this guy having any sort of power or control, or who he knows goes through the ringer, and this guy comes out looking on top. So it's nice to see somebody kind of get put in their place in a way. I don't know, maybe I'm just
no, I mean, it's like your lawyers can say whatever they want to try to win your case. I mean, there was this whole thing about how they claimed that she shit in their bed and left it there to like torture him, basically. And it was later, like the testimony later was like, no, like their dog had an incontinence issue and like pooped in their bed. But like they were alleging that Amber would do like sadistic shit like that, just trying to paint her as the abuser.
Right.
That she would like defecate in their bed and leave it there.
And this was after, right?
This came out later. This is after Johnny Depp has already agreed and was like kind of like gave that what did you say? Mm-hmm.
That statement. So he's now retracting and coming out with this other stuff, right?
Right.
Am I correct on this timeline?
So he sues her for writing the op-ed in the Washington Post, even though she doesn't name him. But it was probably, he's saying, everyone's connecting the dots, and there's a non-disparagement clause in our divorce. So I'm sure like now it's like game on, basically. Like I'm now going to throw everything I can at the wall and see what sticks, because I'm going to take you down. I'm not really sure like how much his career has suffered. I feel like he's still making movies and people are still working with him.
Probably.
But so they go back to court over this. And I remember seeing this in the news. And when they file to dismiss Depp's defamation suit, Amber then details like, okay, well, these are like more specific instances of abuse that occurred. She referred to him as the monster. She detailed an attack where he threw her through a ping pong table and then dragged her through broken glass in a separate incident. And she says, like, I still have scars on my arms and feet from this. And I guess that suit is still ongoing to this day. They have never settled that.
Wow.
Yeah. So then this year, and I remember this, someone leaked phone recordings of audio of Amber and Johnny fighting. And she's heard saying, I'm sorry that I didn't hit you across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched. And I remember how she said that. She was like, babe, you're not punched. She says, I don't know what the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you. And then he says in the recording, I left last night. Honestly, I swear to you, because I just couldn't take the idea of more physicality, more physical abuse on each other. Because we had continued it, it would have gotten fucking bad. And baby, I told you this once. I'm scared to death. We are a fucking crime scene right now. And she says, I can't promise you I won't get physical again. God, I fucking sometimes get so mad I lose it. So what I want to say about that is there's really this expectation that abuse victims have to be perfect. Like, we're not perfect. They're not perfect. If you put someone in a situation where like their lives are threatened consistently, where they're like badgered and harassed, where everything they work hard for is at stake, where their property is ruined, where they're embarrassed in front of their family and friends and employer and strangers and coworkers, and humiliated in front of their children. I just how would you react, And I feel like this out of context clip of Amber being like, yes, like I did hit you. I don't know. I'm just like feeling more on her side. Like, she's living in this abusive, shitty relationship. And like, you do things that are uncharacteristic of how you might act. Or when like, you're really like, just not even defending yourself from your abuser in the moment, but you're just constantly living with this person and living with their treatment of you. Like, I'm sure I did and said things to my ex at the time that I would never do to anyone. But you're just in like this constant state of like stress and fear and anxiety. So I just don't feel like her like hitting him or something. I mean, we don't know what happened, but I feel like there were definitely times where I would like defend myself. And
I know what you're talking about, like defending yourself. I remember trying to defend myself and it only made it worse. And then after one really bad incident, I was afraid to ever try and defend myself again.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know why I'm really getting this energy, because I have seen women that have pushed men before, and then the man finally snaps and she's like, you're abusive. And all I'm thinking is like, you pushed it to that point. So I don't know why I'm kind of getting that vibe in this situation. I could be totally reading it wrong.
I feel that way too often, just about like when I think about my grandparents and stuff, and it's like, yeah, was the physical abuse okay? Fuck no, not at all. But I could see the emotional abuse and the mind fuck that would happen to make a person snap, and all the other things that come from around that. And then sometimes too, and there is a big difference between strength at full grown male and female and all of that stuff, but women do hit too often, and we hear about this a lot. So it's hard, and I get what you guys are both saying right now, for sure.
I just have this like one vision of this, this one couple that she was like, she called the cops on him this one time, and he was sitting there crying to the cops. He got arrested over the ordeal, but this was like after her attacking him and him doing nothing. And all he was trying to do was to get out of the house, get out of the situation and leave and get out, remove himself from the situation. And in the process of doing so, he accidentally, elbowed her or something. And his motions for it, like, all lined up. It made sense to me, but he ended up getting arrested for it because they believed her. And all I was thinking was like, they did not see what she was doing to him, like the full blow and just hitting him nonstop and like shoving him and that like screaming at him. So, I mean, it's there's two sides to every story, and then there's the truth.
Yeah. I think in this case, everything I've read and have followed, what it sounds like is that he was the one in the relationship initiating the abuse. And the attacks on her were, the throwing the phone, the throwing through a ping pong table, the like. So
she was more so responding, reacting to the situation versus starting the fight and being the initial abuser.
Yeah. And I it's not okay for anyone to put their hands on anyone. And I'm not, condoning that, but if you are in a relationship where like the violence is initiated against you and you take it and you take it and you take it, it wears you down and it lowers the like expectation in the relationship of like what's acceptable and what isn't. And I think it is this thing that we put on abuse victims. Like they have to be perfect with every movement they make in the face of the abuse that they're enduring. So for me, when I heard that tape, I feel like what she was saying was like, you like have brutalized me, and all I did was like slap you because you're being emotionally and verbally abusive to me right now, and I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that's what was happening. I don't think it was like, I mean, but again, like we weren't there, but
right. Yep. I see what you're saying though.
You know, I think it's like, how can we expect someone to keep taking it and to never do anything about it?
To never stand up for themselves. And I feel like this leads us, like this might be an Evel Knievel jump totally here, but I feel like this leads us to this like whole, like parents teaching their kids. You hear some parents say, if they hit you, you hit them back. Or you hear other parents say, if they hit you, you do not hit them back, you go tell an adult. And I don't know why, that just came
because it's
the forefront of my mind.
It's a core foundation and belief that almost every single, human on this planet deals with, that, this discussion has been happening since we were all born, and it's been a 50-50 divide on that.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I think the person who initiates the violence in a relationship, like the true abuser, like we don't need to be nitpicking what the other person was doing because they're under such duress, emotional, physical stress. And I think it is a shade of victim blaming. And I think that Amber like endured a lot of victim blaming throughout this entire ordeal.
Probably. That's the thing. Because you said it yourself, like it's so hard because nobody is there, nobody does know, and then they're afraid, and all we can do is talk about the kind of the what ifs. But yeah, victim blaming is not a good thing.
No, and it's what keeps women silent, and it's
shame. It's easier just to not talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I could have, if in my situation, if we were just sitting on the couch and I never did this, but this is just an example, like if I just jumped up and like punched my ex in the face, I feel in my situation at the time, it would have been more than justified because of like just the ongoing abuse that was going on, even just the emotional abuse going on. And I just don't think we can hold victims and abusers to the same standard of behavior.
Well, yeah, and it's hard because it is an instant, case by case, instance by instant. And of course, like, if you're sitting on a park bench somewhere and then all of a sudden, you like a girlfriend starts beating their boyfriend, that's going to look pretty bad on her kind of thing.
Right.
But, I understand what you're talking about, and I know what you're saying for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So July of this year, the libel trial begins. And so Depp was suing News Group Newspapers, which publishes The Sun, over a 2018 article in which they called him a wife beater, in direct reference to his marriage with Amber. So he sues the publisher and he sues the executive editor, Dan Wooten of The Sun, for libel. Winona Ryder, this is interesting. Winona Ryder, they used to date in the 90s.
Oh, okay. But I told you, I'm like a Martian on this subject.
Yeah.
I wasn't into Johnny Depp. I never was into him.
They were in a big,
on my type.
they were in a high profile romance. And then so Winona and his ex-wife, Vanessa Paradis, she's French. They both like defended him and were like, he's never been violent. Winona Ryder said The idea that he's an incredibly violent person is the farthest thing from the Johnny I knew and loved. I cannot wrap my head around these accusations. And Paradis says, nothing like the true Johnny I have known. And from my personal experience of many years, I can say he was never violent or abusive to me.
Again, like, so Amber was saying too, it happened mainly around the drugs and alcohol. That was my ex. It was the drugs and alcohol that were the trigger.
Yeah.
Certain alcohol, certain drugs. I mean, it's so.
Well, and also, yeah, like, what's not to say that he got deeper into his addictions, and at that point with Amber, like, he that's when he started being abusive. I think you can abuse. I mean, I don't know. I feel like most abusers abuse every woman they're in a relationship with, or every person they're in a relationship with.
See, I was totally wondering that, because I was had seen a picture of my ex and the new girl he's with, and I'm like wondering, I'm like, is she going through what I went through? Am I the only one that he put this, like, did he stop after that? And I don't know why. I'm curious.
I think that there's absolutely patterns of that, and like, kind of once an abuser, always an abuser thing. Like, there is some validity to that if there's not conscious change that happens, because I do hold space. That's my job, for people to change habits, and I think that they can. But I also have witnessed quite a bit recently, actually, just through friends and family and different things. And sometimes I wonder if it's the type of relationship. And sometimes, like, we'll just use, for instance, like, when a man really loves a woman, is truly in love with a woman, he's probably going to treat her a little differently than someone who's in a relationship that he doesn't love. And I've seen that a couple of times, where there's people who've been really, like, abusive in relationships where they were just with someone because, they think they're in love or lust or whatever. But then when they really actually truly love someone, they treat them a little differently. And so I do think there can be sometimes those situations where they might be really abusive to one woman they're with and not so much to another.
Well, and that also beckons the question, can a serial abuser actually love anyone? I've wondered that many times, like, about my ex. Like, did he ever really, like, love me? Or is it like what he thought love is?
I think it's the capacity in which they can love themselves, for the most part. And then sometimes there are certain relationships that are catalysts to help them love in a different way that they never did before. But yeah, I think it's to the capacity they can love themselves. And I do believe at the very base, almost all humans are there sociopaths and true narcissists in a small population, of course, but I think almost all humans are meant to love unconditionally. And because we were all loved conditionally in different ways and all got fucked up by our parents and society and religions and all the things, each and every single case is so incredibly different, because it depends on that individual's psyche and social conditioning.
Yeah.
What their ability and capacity is at that time.
Right. So, I mean, you probably can, just because you didn't abuse other people in other relationships doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity to do that to someone.
Well, because you hear about serial killers who had wives and children and families and never harmed them at all, but, went out and got all their aggressions out on other people, so there's this weird, different capacity. And I'm very much in this wild world that we live in all these dimensions. Like, you can have that and some. I think all things are possible.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to our saga.
Literally yesterday, the court ruled, the High Court in London ruled that they ruled against Depp. And they ruled that The Sun, the newspaper, was correct in reporting that Depp was violent towards his ex-wife. So in reaching the ruling, the judge referred to 14 separate incidents that The Sun's lawyers cited to justify calling Depp a wife beater. A spokesperson for The Sun said, "The Sun has stood up and campaigned for the victims of domestic abuse for over 20 years. Domestic abuse victims must never be silenced. And we thank the judge for his careful consideration and thank Amber Heard for her courage in giving evidence to the court. Oh, and then her lawyers in response said, you ain't seen nothing yet, because there's still a case going in the US and we are going to present a lot of evidence. Her lawyers said, we are committed to obtaining justice for Amber in the US court and defending her right to free speech, which, listen,
free speech, that's the talk of the time right now.
Right. And you know what? We own our stories, and we own our experiences, and we get to talk about them. And I really, he's not able to prove that these things didn't happen. There's a lot of evidence on her side. So
I would be so pissed if I was told that I'm not allowed to talk about what I went through, because that's part of my healing process.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that, again, that's people not wanting to admit or acknowledge what they've done wrong.
I still have a hard time with it, and I do the work that I do, and I still have a hard time owning my story because I still sometimes want to protect other people.
Yeah, and we really are taught to protect our abusers and to protect like our reputations and our family's reputations. Like I've been shamed so many times for being super honest about what happened to me, but like by my own mother.
I had my family tell me to shh too. They just leave that in the past. People don't want to hear about that. I was like
because it brings them shame because they feel like they're a failure, this or that, or and that's the other thing too. It's like that's why I hold space for healing, because I think parents can be really abusive to their children, but I think that they could heal and have better relationships. And as newer, newer generations come along, they can evolve and heal, and like there is space for that. But they have to learn, and that boundaries have to be set. And like, you don't get time with the grandkids if you're going to act like, a crazy racist at the dinner table kind of thing. We'll just use like the big example right now that a lot of people deal with. And so I hold space. There's room. People can, once, everything's taught. Once you unlearn something and change your habit, then your perspective changes. And that's the problem too with all the hearsay and this and that, is because you do own your story, and your story was your perspective at that time. And that's all you had.
Yeah. There's just no substitution for speaking your truth. And for not living, with all these secrets.
I agree. I think that's part of the problem too. I'm someone who I really I cannot lie. Like it's really hard for me to lie. Like when I was younger, I was able to. And I remember being like 19 and being like, damn, I'm fucking manipulative. Like, why do I lie about shit? And then it'd be hard to like keep up with things and stuff. And I'm like, oh, and I dropped it. But there's a lot of people who still do lie a lot about all kinds of things and have a hard time keeping up with it. And I think that they have a hard time finding their own truth sometimes too. And that's a whole nother layer into this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man. So all these domestic violence organizations and charities are really happy about this court decision. This one charity called Refuge, I'm not sure where they're based, but they released a statement saying, "This is an important ruling and one which we hope sends a very powerful message. Every single survivor of domestic abuse should be listened to and should be heard. No survivor should ever have her voice silenced. A common tactic used by perpetrators of domestic abuse is to repeatedly tell victims that no one will believe them, and to use power and control to try and silence them. What we have seen today, seen and heard, is that power, fame, and financial resources cannot be used to silence women. That is a welcome message for survivors of domestic abuse around the world."
That is so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool. I do like that statement.
It's so true. And it doesn't matter that they were celebrities or that, she had the means to walk away or all of those details. I mean, clearly there was abuse going on. And she decided that her platform as a celebrity, she could actually help and enact change. And that's what she did.
Yep.
And I really am not on Mr. Depp's side on this.
I have to say, I used to be a Johnny Depp fan until all of this.
Me too.
And then through all of this and like seeing over the past, in the beginning I was kind of, I don't know, on it. But after seeing some of the interviews and seeing him, hearing him talk, and just kind of the arrogance that comes through, it really didn't resonate well with me. And now I've lost my Johnny Depp's interest.
I was kind of, I'm weird and intuitive and all that, but like, I always thought he was kind of creepy. And then I just was never physically attracted to him because it was always, Johnny Depp's so hot. And I'm like, meh, like I said earlier, not my type, but yeah, he always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know, but time will tell how all this goes because this is still unfolding. So we can check back in here on the show.
Yeah, I didn't know until I read today that the suit in the US is still going. So it'll be interesting, but it's clear that he wants to silence her. I feel like he's brought more attention to himself as a, alleged abuser by going after her. And I do think that that's just like his affluence and his arrogance.
Mm.
And we're not going to silence anyone anymore.
Nope.
We're not going to do it.
Time for things to be seen and heard and shared.
Exactly.
Amen. Please.
Seen and Amber Heard.
Yes.
That's Amber Heard.
Horrible joke. Sorry.
I liked it. I thought it was cute. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our show today, doesn't it, ladies?
Yeah, it's about an hour. We didn't get to some other things that we were going to talk about, but that's okay because we'll be back next week.
We've got plenty of time. So thank you all for supporting us. Please follow us and give us a like if you can. We have a YouTube channel, Heart Over Ego Radio. You can find us on all major podcast apps, Facebook, Instagram, and then Seen and Heard. We have our very own Facebook and Instagram pages. And you can also email us at Seen and Heard, Vanessa, Seen and Heard podcast or Seen and Heard?
Seen and Heard podcast at Gmail.
Seen and Heard podcast at Gmail. And we're looking for guests. If you feel comfortable sharing your story, you can be anonymous. You could use your first name. You can use a different name. You could not use a name at all, whatever it is. If you want to use your name and share your story, we're looking for guests who want to share their experiences with abuse. So please reach out to us. And thank you so much for tuning in and joining us here on Heart Over Ego Radio. Vanessa and Lexi, thank you both so much as always.
We should also note that you are soon going to be able to find Seen and Heard on all of the podcast apps as its own podcast. It's not going to be under the Heart Over Ego feed.
Yes.
We're working out some tech little details. So look for that soon. You can just search Seen and Heard, however you listen to podcasts, whether it's, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. So that will be happening soon. And we will have details about that on our Facebook and Instagram.
We sure will.
Okay. Well, so good to talk to you guys.
Yes. Well, and we'll see you guys on the other side of the election. We'll pick back up after that.
Yeah.
Take care, Lex. Take care, V. Bye.
Bye.